Hello and welcome to Epic Loot Radio. I'm your host, and joining me is my host with the most, the man, the one, the legend, Chaosprime. Chaos, how are you doing today? We got a lot to talk about, man. What's going on?
I am doing amazing. Doing a lot of Outriders. I am doing a lot of Persona.
Ooh.
Generally, Outriders is taking a lot of my time just farming for that elusive gear. It is the game I've been looking for a long time.
Yes, it definitely, I think, helps ease some of that Anthem burden. But have you been hit by any inventory wipes? Does anybody that you know has been hit by these horrible inventory wipes?
A couple of people in my Discord have been hit by it. I've spent the last 45 hours out of my 100 hours playtime playing exclusively with crossplay, playing the whole Russian roulette kind of thing, risking it as there's no tomorrow. I've not been hit by it. I've actually been really lucky. There was one scare, but it turned out just to be the servers being slow. But yeah, we've been playing free players from PS5, and PC crossplay, and we've had, thankfully, touch wood, no issues during the 40-50 hours of gameplay that we've done crossplay exclusively.
Well, that's excellent. I haven't been hit by it, but I've been taking a whole different strategy. Been leveling alts. So I've got two. I have my Devastator and Technomancer all the way through the campaign. And then I have been working on Trickster. And then eventually I will get to Pyromancer, especially because essentially as they do buffs and nerfs and adjustments, which I think definitely I feel the need as a Devastator. Maybe I just haven't got the right mod, but I think overall it feels like the general consensus is Devastator's a little bit on the weekend. Having a good time, and so hopefully we'll have more options to play. And then they put out a patch, but I'm hearing that it's still happening or it's not happening. Like at the end of the day, like we'll have to wait to see if they have any official word, if they've been able to manage to solve obviously the bug, because it does demotivate me to play. And so I've also used this time to level up in Guild Wars, do the Final Fantasy 14 5.5 content. Which I really enjoyed, and I'm very excited for where Endwalker is going. And I have a massive guild goal in that game. And then we guys, just kind of in general gaming news, and I know we're jumping a little bit ahead and around here, but PSO2's new Genesis beta kicks off May 14th. So the 14th through the 16th is going to be a really busy couple of days for me. I'm going to probably have to schedule some time off work and more.
I'm looking forward to that.
Now, I see a comment here. Scott says, hey, you and Chris talked recently about Shadowbringers or Stormblood, I'm assuming, Stormblood in this case, coming to the free trial recently. There could be some award for being subbed over the trial. Urged people to sub and reward those who are with swag. Now, Chris was speculating on that aspect, because I think when we got into it, the aspect of if they continue to extend the free trial, I think they have to come up with a hybrid solution, because right now, if they keep doing that, I don't know why I would tell people to sub. It's like every 2 years you're going to get the game for free and you never have to pay a subscription. And then if you ever give them money, which is the weirdest thing to me, if you ever give them money, you're now kicked out of the free trial and you have to sub for life. So at some point, if they keep giving and improving that free trial, they need a different business model. But I mean, we could only sit here and speculate what that would be.
I mean, I disagree with that one.
Okay.
For me, I want to play the latest stuff. I want to be in with the latest raids, even if it is just a story, because that is essentially what I do nowadays. I don't hardcore raid anymore because I just don't have time. It was a big time sick, believe me.
It's the time, and then I think it's also how fast the content expires, and that's I could get into a rant on the gear treadmills.
Oh, don't get me started with it.
But continue. Maybe we'll just say.
We should definitely get into that, because
throw out the outline and be like, we're just gonna bit about gear treadmills in video games.
But 2 years is a long time.
It's not 2 years. It's every 6 months. If you come in at the 0.4, like in 14, then it's a 2-year process. And honestly, I think it's like that's the time to play. 0.5, play the game, bounce out.
But then other content like Bosnia are dead. If you're looking at what was the previous one before that? The one Eureka, which was for me one of the best pieces of content ever made, in my opinion. It brought me back to the home of Final Fantasy XI. It just was so much fun for me to play. But that content also is no longer existing. And if you're not there at the time, certain content will just fly by and it never recovers. And again, that falls back to the whole thing that you were saying in regards to, the recycling of gear ratios, and that happens every patch. But ultimately, if you want to play the latest stuff, you got to pay for it. If you're okay with missing out on certain content, but just want to experience the story, then I think that's fine. That's all the better for the player base, because there will always be new players who sign up to the latest patch, for the latest game.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have more players to play with them along the way. So it's a win-win situation for Square.
Let me ask you this question then, because essentially this is just the thought that I keep bouncing around in my head. Let's think about that free trial methodology. I thought I hit play. Anyway, great production here, Brian. But in the case of the free trial with Final Fantasy XIV, what if they went to a model where, let's say, the latest content, or even where it was like Shadowbringers and Endwalker required a subscription to play. But then if you've already paid for the game, if you've already handed Square money in this case, and you're not in like, hey, you let your subscription lapse, that you could still log in, you could still engage with anything prior to whatever that kind of like, okay, to play this content forward, you have to be subscribed. But anything back here is a part of kind of just this free open window. People have already paid for it. And then that would maybe even encourage people to kind of log in, chat with their friends and say, yep, okay, I'm going to go and sub because I really want to run this latest content. What would you think about kind of a hybrid model like that?
See, it's funny you mentioned that, because my kid started playing 14 on the trial.
Okay.
And then on the PlayStation. Then when we went over to the PC, it kind of messed up for him on the other side, and it wouldn't let him. So I subbed a month for him. And when it came back to his PlayStation account, it didn't allow him to continue. And that caused him a lot of upset because he preferred playing on the PlayStation. He was nowhere near that content. And he played it so casually. The free trial for him was perfect. Now, going by the model that you're saying, to me, makes the perfect sense. If you're not paying for the latest stuff, then you'll lose access to the latest stuff. But having access to the previous stuff that's already available there on the free trial just makes sense to remain there. If I pick up a weapon in
especially if you've handed Square-Enix like $60 already, like, hey, I like this enough. It feels like I handed you money and then I have to, I'm now committing to this subscription when I might, like if you're in the military, like one of the things that's often brought up is that people will abuse the system in the case of like guild traders. And I can definitely see that. I would say that if you're not subbed, you can't engage, you can't sell things on the market. But if you are like, if you do decide to sub, then all these extra perks. So whatever that premium feature list would have to be, I think, doled out. But I haven't seen a model like that. Anyway, I cut you off. Go ahead, Chaos.
Yeah, the system that you're mentioning, I think, is the ideal way to do it. So if I've got a weapon from Shadowbringers, for example, I went and did the raid and I got a really cool weapon and it's really powerful. If I then go into the free-to-play trial, I shouldn't be able to use that. And that would be my incentive to subscribe. If I want to do the latest content and use the latest stuff, there's my incentive to do it, because I want to use the shiny stuff. I want to get all the cool stuff. But if for some reason I just don't want to sub for that month, then I should still be able to play it as if I'm playing the free trial and play the free-to-play accessible areas. And it's really weird that you can't. I'm not sure if it's a back-end issue with Square-Enix or not. Like, right now, I want to play Final Fantasy XI as well, but I refuse to pay for 2 subscriptions at the same time.
Yeah.
Previously, they had this system when 1.0 was out, but they combined the subscriptions for 1.0 and Final Fantasy XI, and you paid like a discounted rate.
Yeah, they did that for like 3. They only did that for 3 months, and then obviously 14 went free to play for a short period of time. And then I always kind of try to like, what was it that they were only going to do it temporarily for a little bit of time, or that was a special promotion, or things just went to crap, and they're like, how do we solve this? I thought they were thinking of it as a way of trying to move Final Fantasy XI players into 14. And then
I get that, but if they actually offered that model now, even if I played 11 for 2 months a year, I would be subscribing to both for the whole year.
Yeah, I think the subscription model for MMOs doesn't make any sense, and I know it's a controversial subject because there are people who will adamantly defend it. But in the age of Game Pass, in the age of Netflix, in the age of like all of these things, where before like there's definitely pros to a subscription model. Like I do want to acknowledge that, but at the end of the day, like when I'm getting so much more value from another subscription model that I think essentially what it'll be curious to see if Square Enix is like if they do another MMORPG, if they take 14 and evolve it into 20, like Yoshi P kind of joked, will they follow that subscription model, or will we see a whole different kind of set? Because even with World of Warcraft, even though, and I don't like that game, but even with WoW, they have WoW and WoW Classic. Like you get two games, two kind of these service games for the price of one. And then they make, I think, it all up on the real money trading kind of aspect of the game itself. But do you think the subscription model is a model that is this is going to be kind of the last beacon of the sub for an MMO?
So subscription based gaming, especially like in MMOs, it's a really difficult one.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's still a market for it because to me, it shows, it means that the developers will deliver content on a cycle. I know Shadowbringers has been the exception, where it's been really light, really, really light. Even I can't defend how light Shadowbringers has been.
I still think they're working on something big in the back end. Like I've said this for years, where it's like
I think it's mainly because 16 was so far behind that they needed to devote resources to 16. That would make most sense because even the stuff that they promised for Shadowbringers, like the slime, the minion farm, that was supposed to come with for Shadowbringers. That's all being pushed over to Endwalker, and to me, I think 16 was just so far behind. They needed to put numbers on there to do it, and ultimately, because of the way the pandemic has been, onboarding and stuff takes a hell of a lot longer now than it used to when you was sitting in a room and watching someone pencil something onto a blackboard. So I think subscriptions do still have a role. And when I look at the free-to-play games that are around right now, they are my reasoning why free-to-play subscription models still will be a thing. When I play 14, I don't feel like the XP grind is too much. I don't feel like doing something that I set out to do is too much. Like if I want to just this week go and cap my tombstones, I just need to do 5 dungeons for that week on 5 separate days, and it's done. Obviously, that's not utilizing my my subscription effectively, but if that's all the time I have for this week, I can go and do that. And if you're in a free-to-play MMO, you don't get that. There is a physical wall there that basically says, no, you have to go and do X, Y, Z, B, Q, R, S, T just to get there. Whereas the business model with a paid-for game, they skip all of that because you're already paying. So you just go from A to B. You don't need to do all the stuff in the middle. Free-to-play MMOs just seem to add a lot of fillers. I've played quite a few of them in the past. And every time I've tried to get into them, there's been just so much just blockade. They tried that pay-to-play model. Black Desert Online tried it. Secret World tried it.
What about Guild Wars 2 as a counterpoint to your argument?
Didn't that slow down like dramatically in terms of updates?
So that's the trade-off. That's one of the things in my video that seems to be doing really well. Like I've been continuing to play Guild Wars. I'm trying not to. One of the things I try to do, or I've said in videos, and it's true, is I'm not trying to farm for views. Like, hey, I'm playing this game, and then it's like every, like update, right? So it's like I've been, somebody came in and were like, oh, I see that you haven't posted on Guild Wars 2. You're, I guess you left. It's like, no, I actually just crossed over level 61. I'm having an absolute blast. I've actually spent some money on the game in terms of like a little bit of bought some extra character slots because those were on discount. And I was like, I'm having such a good time with the game. I want to find the right role. And so they even have an expansion coming out this year. And so the subscription model does give that consistent flow of revenue, but I just can't see a single MMO persisting off of that. I think like from that model, like you have to it's kind of where Game Pass, I think, is such a game changer. And that's where we'll get into our big topic here in a minute. But where Game Pass is like, you get all of this value and it becomes like, I pay $15 a month for Game Pass. I'm getting way more I'm getting way more value out of that. And then I'm paying $15 for 14. And yes, like I have no problem subbing and supporting for 14. I think I'm just getting to a point where they need to add 11 into that grouping. They need to sit here and say, you know what, we're going to incorporate this as the value proposition, because even WoW is competing against it. Like in a bubble itself, when you start talking about your time, your money, and being able to play games, like, yeah, I'm with you. I'd play 11, I actually do play 11 2 to 3 times out of the year. And what I've done in that case is I actually unsub from 14 and put it into 11. I do that, but I would happily just keep it installed and check in on it on the regular, because I have such nostalgia for it. I do want to say, Scott says, I only sub to one MMO at a time because $15 a month for every new one is too much. If the price for subs came down, I would definitely be sub and probably 14 in WoW, but not to feel guilty or dumb.
Well, yeah, obviously, it is a heavy investment, and obviously a heavy time investment as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest problem I have with MMOs in general. Even 14, if you want to do, if you want to do a lot of stuff, it's probably one of the least time-consuming games I've seen, but it still requires dedicated time. Like if you wanted to do Heavens on High from floor 1 to 100, that's like 3-4 hours worth of a time slot investment that you need to set aside, sit down and play. And it could even go to 5 hours. I think we did it the first time, floor 1 to 100, and it took us like just under 5 hours. It's a big investment of your time. But that's the biggest problem. Outside of the money, I think the time investment is the biggest problem with MMOs, which is why trying to maintain 2 at the same time, I don't think is realistic. I think you can have one that you focus on and the other that you have on the side that you dip and dive into as you continue going.
Yeah, I think, and then Newhart says that, to be honest, I do approve of the subscription service. The majority of free-to-play, in my experience, has been lackluster, both in development and content. And it's much less consistent with updates, and then have been, obviously, with Shadowbringers. And that's one of the things, we're just kind of, this is a conversational show. We do have an outline. We might get to it. But when I look at, with rumors that, WoW 9.1 patch might happen in, June, July, August, all of a sudden you start talking about okay, you are paying a sub for that. And their model actually gives them that, saying, hey, you're not happy. We got classic. We got, other options. I'm waiting to see them turn that model into kind of I could see them going and saying, here's our games. You can just sub and play the latest Call of Duty or something like that. But it will be interesting to see what Activision does. I don't think they're going to be willing to lose money like Microsoft's willing to lose money in the short term or mid term to kind of acquire all that content for players. But
Activision making $8 million a day with Call of Duty Mobile, they can afford to lose a few pennies.
Oh, it's Activision though. They're not gonna they will not do that. They will fire your ass and send you home.
Yeah, I've already.
And we're gonna write some big old checks to some people. It's like how anyway.
I mean, blacklisted just for saying that.
I don't care. Honestly, I just don't care. It's like, hey, I love games, and I'm going to talk. I want to always make sure I'm talking about them openly and honestly in the situation at hand. So, kind of taking that though, I'm really enjoying this kind of subscription concept, because another game that I know we're excited about, and even with Death Monkey, we keep talking about it. In fact, I'm going to be checking my email later today and see if I got an alpha key on New World. It's coming out August 31st. And I think when we start looking at them, they're a buy to play. I'm definitely against the free to play model. It's just so lightweight that anybody, I think it's put a little money on the table, that's great. And now come and experience the game, but it's Amazon. And when we talk about the pocketbooks of Amazon, one of the things that I could see them easily doing is obviously throwing money into this, into what would be a theoretical pit for a couple of years. And that's what I think they have to do to get New World to succeed, based off of the fact that it's launching probably WoW's going to have their patch either before or after. You have the expansion for 14. You got the expansion for Guild Wars 2. You have a new MMO that I went ahead and just kind of purchased this morning. The Legends of Swords, which is that like Chinese one that's coming out, but that's being published as a buy to play. Where in China it's a subscription based game, and so you have all of this people who are competing against a studio that has yet to release a successful hit. But the MMO in and of itself, if they're willing to invest and deliver constant content updates, it will prove as a way of inviting people into the game, or could in theory. You have any thoughts on that, especially with like, does Amazon stand any chance with New World?
Honestly, I think it's an uphill battle for Amazon at the moment with New World.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I find with Amazon's New World, it doesn't have the wow factor.
Mm-hmm.
Not World of Warcraft, but as in the wow factor. When I saw the trailers for 14, you see like the Ifrit, the Shivas, the big avatars and big battles that you do, and it looks amazing. The trailers on its own sell it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you will about World of Warcraft, the trailers look great. I really, really enjoy their trailers. They make me want to play the game. I don't see that level of investment with New World. I've jumped into New World for a bit. It was fun to play, but it's not a game that I said to myself, you know what, I could see myself playing this for the next 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
I just ran around without any direction. Black Desert was the same as well. It gave me the same thing. I jumped into Black Desert, spent almost a week playing it, but every time I was playing it, I kept asking myself the same thing. Why am I playing this when I could be playing another game that I'm enjoying more?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's their biggest problem right now. New World has potential, regardless of whether it has the Amazon label or not. What it needs to do is sell itself, and at the moment, it's failing to sell itself, and it needs to sell itself if it wants people to play. You need those first few quests to be exciting. You need these first few quests, or at least like that prologue, to draw you in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at the video that you're showing right now, this instantly looks 10 times more interesting.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Why would I go play that when I could play this?
See, the thing is that when I look at it, and I'm going to highlight Scott's comment here because I think it's really interesting, because it's like it really comes down to the money, and if he's willing, like if Amazon's willing to continue to invest in it, that it could end up being the difference maker. Because one of the things that we all know, especially as like we're playing Outriders, and yes, it's got issues, but yes, we play these games that more than how they launch, we judge them for how they're supported in the long run, and that's one of the things when we look at with New World. It's like I actually have I don't care. I think if it launches quietly in a much quieter state, and as long as Amazon wants to funnel money into its developers, allowing them to continue to build and build and build, that at some point when you've done all that you've wanted to do in Endwalker, when you've done all that you wanted to do, and then you see like whether it's every month or every 2 months or whatever, that it's like this other game continues to get better and to get better and to get better, it invites you back in and invites that curiosity. Because like you could almost track all game launches within the concept of like, you get the people on the hype train lets you, like no matter what, you're going to that's going to dip down. And then essentially then the community gets established by that process. And so if you can, it's more about like, can you get to that, you ride that bump. And then if you can continue to trend that upward, you can end up building a solid foundation community. And Amazon is one of the only studios that exists that can funnel that kind of money into this without sitting here and having to yank the chain and change. That doesn't mean they won't yank the change and completely mess up. Who knows? Like, I wish I could go a year into the future and be like, yeah, that was nuts. I didn't see that coming. I didn't see Amazon buying Square-Enix. Or like, whoa, I can't believe this happened, but can't. Last time I checked, nope, still can't time travel.
It's all about marketing for me.
Yeah.
I don't see any of it. That's the biggest problem. You can invest all the money in the world you want into an MMO or a game, but if it's not marketed correctly, and if people aren't aware of it.
Right. And no one's talking about it. If no one's streaming it, no one's,
Do you remember a game called Binary Domain? in chat.
Never heard of it.
Anyone in chat remember a game called Binary Domain? It's a game released on the Xbox 360, and it is one of my favorite games of all time. It is such a good game. It is by Sega. It's got an amazing storyline. It's like a mix between Terminator and iRobot.
Mm-hmm.
It actually plays really well. It's got really good voice acting, really good dialogue. But the game came and disappeared without anyone ever noticing it because there was zero marketing. Recently, there's another game that came out that you may have seen me streaming, Balan Wonderland.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that game. For all the negative reviews it got, they criticized it for the fundamental way the game was designed. And to me, that's what made the game interesting. Mm-hmm. You had to think about what costumes you took into each encounter to make sure you could find what you're looking for. And if you didn't, you could replay that level or find a checkpoint, get the costume you needed, and go back and pick up the secrets that you wanted to. The game was colorful, cheerful, and it was essentially designed for kids anyway.
Mm-hmm.
How much of it have you heard around? Anything?
How much have I heard about it? No, like it was, they showed it off. It looked pretty. I watched your streams of you playing it. I was like, well, it looks like a kind of a B tier platformer.
It's a couch platformer as well.
Something
you can play. It's a couch platformer, so something you can play with a kid.
Yeah, couch. Just sit down and play. Yeah, but
what
I rated it as a B tier. Like there was like if I would take as Mario as the pinnacle of the platformer. There has been always these other like platforms that have come out, and I haven't played them all. So, but there was like I remember like a couple like on the like Saturn or the Dreamcast or something like that I check out because I like that kind of game. And then I was like, yeah, this was fine. Like it was okay. And that's kind of when I was watching you play. I was like, well, like it looks fine. It looks like something I don't want to show my kids because I'd rather sit down and play Mario with them. If that's fair.
But it would have done a lot better had they marketed it. And this is the problem that New World has.
Mm-hmm.
No one's talking about it. No one is. I mean, I'm on Twitter every single day, and I don't see a single mention in my feed from any company, from any publication about New World. If people don't talk about it, they forget about it, and it drifts into the wind. Mm-hmm. And even if you come out with a pre-alpha or an alpha or a beta, by that point, no one cares, and all you're doing is hurting your game. You need to be pushing, trailers, updates, clips, gameplay, all the things that you want that will sell your game. You need to be making sure that the community out there that's interested in the MMO franchise, that is your market, because the MMO market is big.
Yeah, it's weird that they won't let their alpha players out of NDA, and I know we've got some alpha players actually in chat right now, but they can't talk about the game, and it's like either they need to. Yeah, I think you're right. I think 100% that the fact is that no one's really talking about it makes it easy to forget about. It's games are a conversation; they're a living, breathing conversation, and I think they've both been benefited and hurt in different ways by social media in that regards, right? So a game that has that, you like a single player game has to come into the market incredibly hot to become like a big keystone piece of the conversation. It also has to be good, so we can't discount that. But that's why you see like multiplayer games, MMOs, Outriders, things like that have that multiplayer component continue to be a part of that conversation and continue to dominate that, because that's where game streaming and Twitch is, have become kind of a cornerstone into these games. We know that Nier's launching here next week. We know that there's these big single player games, and there's going to be a big marketing push behind those games. But in a year's time, that's kind of where that ends up coming into. And we'll get into it, because actually, you know what? Screw it. Let's just talk about it right now. Let's talk about a little bit of 14, because one of the things I'm also seeing, and I have to actually agree with the concept, is that I can't get over the fact that while I love the content of the Nier Raid series, the content of the the gameplay, the bosses and the dungeons, essentially, it just feels like that was a weird marketing push. Like at the end of the day, like I don't feel connected to the Nier stuff. I don't care about the Nier stuff. I have no investment in that story. It is so disconnected that it just feels like it's like, how can we promote Nier? Oh, and by the way, we're going to launch this, and then the remake is coming out shortly after. I'm excited for the single player game, but I just can't get over the fact that I think Nier was the wrong choice for a raid series in 14. You feel free to agree, disagree, or share any thoughts you have on 5.5 as a patch.
So I haven't played the latest 24-man raid. I have played the previous two, and I am up to date in terms of all the story up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will agree to a certain degree that the inclusion of Nier inside the world of 14, just lore-wise, it didn't make any sense. There's no reason why it should have been there lore-wise, because they could have easily delved into, like the Allagans or something like that, which is a hell of a lot more interesting in terms of the story, because it would have pushed narrative some more.
Yeah.
And like the previous 24-man raids, the Crystal Tower, Tower of the Ancients, World of Darkness, all of these had some connection to the Allagans, and it was always pushing that narrative. World of Darkness, for example, was the World 13, the world that one of the few remaining worlds that was completely consumed by darkness. Again, it's still within the narrative.
Yeah.
Nier wasn't. Now, I think the reason why Nier did come in was because Nier Automata, which I will say is up there within the top 3 of my favorite games of the last 10, 15 years, was such a popular game that everyone was talking about, wanted more of, wanted to see everywhere, that it seemed like the right move to put it into 14 because it was just such high profile. Now, should it have been the way Monster Hunter got integrated, where you have to fight Rathalos as a primal, because that was a collaboration event as well, and that worked really well because it was just a primal fight and you moved on. You got what you wanted to and you left it. Nier's integration into 14, I'll agree, was weird, but I enjoyed it because I'm a massive Nier fan. I really loved Automata. I'm really looking forward to Replicant. And, being able to go through that story inside 14 for me is a joy because I get to experience all the cool music, all the cool boss battles. So, unlike for you where you've not been a big fan of it, for me, it's been great.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, again, from the content, I thought it was great. The gameplay, the bosses, it was interesting. The design of the dungeons is great thematically. I don't know. I just wasn't the thing that I enjoyed.
Did you play Nier at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I played Automata. I'm actually planning on picking up the new one. I thought it's great. They do such a really good job, but I think the thing that I for the longest time I've been asking myself, is it more that I really enjoyed the Ivalice raid series, and then coming off of that, that was such a high point of the 24-man raids in 14 that it just couldn't compete. It wouldn't matter what they did, that it would be all right, it's still not the Ivalice raid, right? So I keep in the back of my head having that thought, and I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure overall. But is there anything out of the patch 5.5 that just dropped that you've been able to experience so far? No spoilers, please.
All I've done is the first few quests in the main scenario. That's all I've done at the moment. I've not. This weekend was when I set time aside to go through the main campaign and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I do know about the primal fights that's there, the penultimate one with the weapons. I do know a few other things that a few friends have told me about, but ultimately, outside of a few quests that I've done, not much.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I've done all the content minus the extremes, and I'm really quite impressed. I've actually more than anything have that they have the gilded mounts, and that makes me excited because it feels like there's something to save up for. Where before I've just kind of kept a standing amount of money, and I've never really kind of worried about it. So it's been fun to kind of get back and engage in the game and really kind of focusing on just if that's going to give me guild, then for me, I find it a little bit worth it, even though I don't see myself having enough money to buy these mounts by the time Endwalker comes out. It's not really about that. I'm just yeah, this is nice. I'm really 25 million for the for one of them, and then 50 million for the other.
All right, I need to go rob
So
a
you
bank.
need 75. Yeah. Well, how cool would it be if there was a mission to rob the bank in 14? That'd be
A
nuts. But
question I do have for you, though, seeing as you have completed all of 5.5 outside of the extreme
mhm.
fights, how long did it take you?
To do all of the content,
Yeah.
see, I got up early. I took lunch like around 11:30. Played in stream for like 2 hours, and I finished the main MSQ stuff because again, this is just part one. The second half of the story comes here in 6 weeks. So that was that, and then to do the fights, the raid took the longest in another hour and a half. So all in all, like it was probably about 7 hours of gameplay. But then also I'm already geared up, so anybody who's still like kind of catching up, like if you're not geared, you could struggle. And I also played on roles that had fast queue times. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't spend any downtime like waiting on that. So it was really kind of focused. So it was like pop, 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 got it done. And yeah, so I'm just trying to like farm up money now. That's about it. What, like, is that longer or shorter than you expected?
Shorter. And this is where I was coming back to the point where you was making in regards to, your $15 a month.
Mm-hmm.
How much am I getting out of this?
Right. Yeah. What's the
Because
value proposition there? Yeah.
when you go and do your weekly dungeons and stuff like that, that's just something that's repetitive daily grind that you do every single day to complete your dailies and get your capped tokens. I
Yes.
don't count that as content.
Okay.
It's everything else around it that I count as content. Being able to go and do stuff like
Interesting. Okay.
farming for, if you want to, if there's like for me for the longest time doing Heavens on High to clear it 5 times to get those rewards was amazing content. Eureka was amazing content because it had a start and a finish of an expedition that you had to do in order to get it. That sort of content to me is extremely good because it gives me so much replayability. The daily grind you do because you have to do in order to get the tokens. If you didn't have to do the
Yeah.
tokens, you wouldn't do those dungeons.
I mean, and that comes right back to kind of how we opened up the podcast today, just talking about that gear grind and, that treadmill that games have. And I don't engage in the treadmill. Like, if I do engage in the treadmill, it's usually where I know I'm going to get the best bang for the buck. And in that regards, I don't care about gearing up until usually the 0.4, 0.5 patch. Like, I just don't. So you're talking about like kind of your weekly roulettes. Like, I just don't. Like, I'm like, all right, I'm going to level. I'm going to get experience. And then as soon as things stop giving me experience, they're worthless to me.
Yeah.
And then, and that ties into my feedback for Outriders as well. Like, I wish there was still this loop of experience that I was getting while playing, because that's essentially the hook for me. Like, and I'm sick. I have a problem. Like, we all know this. Like, this podcast and channel was all designed as a way of therapy of talking about games. So it's been a big ruse, pulled the wool over everybody's eyes. This guy makes a lot of content. He's sick. He loves video games.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much in the same place. Like, if I don't need to do my roulettes, I won't do them.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I do it is to get everything to 520 through buying tokens. And the moment I've hit that 520 mark, where I've got everything except for one ring, naturally, because you need to do the Savage Raid to get the final piece, which I refuse to do. But once I get to that point, even that daily grind content is dead to me. So the only thing left...
the thing is, and not to ruin 14 for you, but you don't even need 520 at all. Like,
I know
you could get through the whole like first half of the next expansion, like probably in 490 gear, but even 510 gear, which would be raid gear in that regard.
Here's something that's quite amusing. Last patch, was it last expansion? Yeah, last expansion was the last time I did Savage Raiding. I had all max gear, and when Shadowbringers dropped, me and my friend, like we do every time an expansion drops, we pretty much do 48 hours. Well, we start at like 9 a.m., finish at midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning, and then pretty much wake up the next morning at 7, 8 a.m. and redo it. We just don't stop. We take 2-3 days off, and we just smash that content through until the main scenario is done. We didn't like all the quests that were giving us gear was utterly pointless all the way up until level 50. Sorry, we're level 80 now, so 77, I think it was, before we actually 77, 78, before we started to get gear that would be like a 1 or 5 strength above what we had. It wasn't until like 79 when the gear started to really surpass the gear you had from the Savage Raid. And it, in a sense, it completely breaks that level of that essence of progression. Because if you do the Savage Raids and have everything at max, you don't need any gear until pretty much max of next level, next expansion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The chat's talking about that, how the problem with doing the raid with Alligans, they didn't exist on the first, and while the first did have its own, thanks Scott. The other thing is like they could have just put the 24 man on on the source in that regard, so it didn't necessarily have to exist there, narratively, when they could put it. But regardless, it is what it is. It exists. I'm happy it exists. But I'm really more or less looking forward to the next one. Like I am excited about Endwalkers. They say it's really going to be pivotal. It's going to be original. We've done a couple of the guest stuff now, and I think they're kind of getting back into like Pandemonium, and with whatever the next 24 man looks exciting. And the great news is we're going to learn more about that here in the next couple of weeks. And then as we kind of march towards Endwalker, that's going to be a little bit of time. Let's shift to the moon, like a Dogecoin. Let's see here.
ESO number 1. I don't know who this is.
I reinstalled ESO on my Series X. I haven't played it yet, but I was like,
hit their name on purpose. They knew they were trolling.
All right. So, guys, if y'all haven't seen late last night as I was going to bed, I'm sure that's pivotal news for you. Oh, Brian goes to bed when news breaks. I was going to bed and I saw people were tweeting it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like a lot of people are interested in buying Square-Enix. I think it's appropriate right now to set up some knowledge, just a little bit, get you guys informed about kind of the order of operations here. A week ago or whatever, it was even rumored that Sony's going to be acquiring Square-Enix. And these are all rumors and speculation. And Square-Enix released a statement this morning saying that what's being covered by Bloomberg is not accurate. It's not true. They're not looking to be sold. Doesn't mean that someone's not offering, right? So in all ways, shape, and forms, these are just rumors. And even what Square Enix said today doesn't hold up. Honestly, I'm like, nothing matters in this regard. Like that's such a non-statement, especially if you look at what they said. And then also at the same time, no one's officially kind of spoken up. So this could easily be a business move. They could have easily leaked that story just so that they could drive stock price up, because Square Enix is a publicly traded company. Anybody can go buy Square Enix. And I think I've seen a lot of tweets about people memeing on it. I thought about trying. I was like, should I do a video saying like, hey guys, good news, bought Square Enix today, and this is what you're going to get. Final Fantasy XI's come back to consoles. We did it. Or like whatever. I was thinking about memeing on that. But then I was like, it's the internet. Anytime I try to be funny, it never people, because I'm usually like kind of newsy and teachy in that way with guides. So I never kind of let my humor shine through, which I have a range. So I can be funny, or I can be like, people will be like, I don't get him. And I'm like, that's fine. But neither here nor there. I was like, I decided not to do that because it just confuses people when I try to put out something funny into the world, like in video form, because they're not used to it. And probably it's not funny. Let's just be real. It's like, there's no guarantee that this is going to land. But is Square Enix for sale? Like everybody's for sale. Anybody says like, I'm not for sale. Like Steam is for sale. Like there's always a number. Now, the question is there somebody willing to pay for that? So you might, I'm going to ask you, Chaos, what do you think it would take to buy Square Enix? How much money does the Chaos have to show up and drop on Square Enix in order to be the new owner? What do you think?
I'd say at least double to triple of what Bethesda cost.
So Bethesda ran at $7 billion.
7.5 billion. So I'd say anywhere between 15 to 21 billion.
For Square Enix? As a fan, do you think that there's some kind of a nostalgic, kind of like how when you sell your house, you're kind of we grew up here, like
the games that they do will return the value.
Mm-hmm.
They make a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
Just look how well Final Fantasy VII Remake sold. despite all the issues that 15 had, it sold amazingly well. 16 will sell well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the other side franchises just seem to do well. At the moment, anything they touch is on fire. Now they're going through a whole process of remakes, and everything they're like Nintendo to me.
Yeah,
You know,
like
no
I have
what they do, they just make money.
well, like that's where it's like when I said earlier, like I just don't like WoW, and people are like, well, that feels good. That checks out. It's like I don't have nostalgia for that game, and it's like even though like there might be connections that 14 has that are very similar, and they're on a path like WoW in that regards. Like, yeah, I'm sunk in. I'm a Square Enix kid. I'm like I grew up with their games. They taught me how to read. In that regards, like they really can help me get over some of my, like earlier development, reading and, issues in that regards. Cause it's like, I love dragons. I'll read, like, I love video games. Like what a concept. So like, yeah, I would actually estimate them. Like me and my dad sat down and I actually put out a video on this a couple months ago. So that's why I'm just feeling like, man, look at me, predicted the future. But ever since Bethesda, it has changed the market. You can't deny that. There's a lot of big players trying to get in on this. And so when it comes down to it, I asked my dad, it's like, how much would it cost? Like, how much would it cost to buy like Square? Because Microsoft tried to do it in 1999. That came out as news. They were at the table ready to sign. And then Square Enix stood up and said, we want more money. And at the time, Microsoft's like, nope. Glad that they didn't buy them at that time because it was a whole different Microsoft, in that regards. But a new Microsoft today there's different implications there. But nowadays, like what would that cost? Like what would it cost to acquire Square Enix? And so they would start at $8 billion. It would be $8 billion to acquire Square Enix. Now, Square Enix has money and capital, and you also have people who would also probably be interested in making a counter offer. So that drives the number up. So you could see Square Enix probably going for the most $15 billion. Like I think at most that's where they would actually come in at in terms of an acquisition to acquire them. Now, you could always partner, and I think we've seen Sony moving closer and closer with the Square Enix relationship with a lot of these like exclusive for a year deals or exclusive for more than a year deals in terms of the PlayStation brand. But when it comes down to the money, it's not just a Microsoft question or a Sony question. You also have Amazon, you have Google in the ring. And I think out of those four companies, when you look at Sony, they don't have the capital to withstand a battle of attrition against Sony, Microsoft, and or Google. Now, if like so, you factor Sony out of the equation, and hands down, I don't know who blinks first. Like if Amazon wanted them, if Google wanted them, if Microsoft wanted them, who would blink? Like who would just say nope? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that because I think like when you look at like what Microsoft needs, Japan.
They do.
Microsoft needs Japan.
But that's where Hideo comes in, right?
Yeah, and if those rumors prove to be true, that can end up being a huge help in that regards. But Microsoft needs Japan. I don't, and I've heard people counter saying that an American company can't buy a Japanese company. They don't have to. Nintendo does the partnership thing. I buy you, you buy me, and then all of a sudden we're sunk in, we're married, and I could see something of that nature happening in that regards. But when I think on it, like I think if nothing else, I think what the vision that I have, at least of Game Pass and Phil Spencer, ties into using his catalog as leverage for Game Pass. He stated that these games, the Bethesda games, etc., will be wherever Game Pass is. And when it comes down to it, even rumors this week alone saying that Game Pass is coming to Switch, I could highly see an environment where, if Microsoft is the proprietor, if they do move forward and purchase Square Enix, that ends up giving even more leverage to, yeah, you can have Final Fantasy, but you got to have Game Pass. What are your thoughts, Cass? You look like you're lost in thought.
The Switch thing has been on the cards for ages. Phil has always offered Nintendo a passage into that as long as they put the Xbox portal onto the Switch. Nintendo originally refused it, but they may be starting to come around to that now. And that would be really great to get it on there. I know Sony has categorically refused having the Xbox portal on the PlayStation dashboard, so chances of them getting it are remote now, unless they change their mind. And with the way Sony of America's handling things, they'd rather see everything chopped off before they even add anything to it. In regards to Sony and Microsoft buying Square-Enix, that would be a big, big move. Not only for their presence in Japan, but also for Game Pass.
Yeah.
And as a first-party studio, that would bolster Xbox and Game Pass so well that it would, in my opinion, would, you know, do a hell of a lot more waves than Bethesda did. The problem with Bethesda is that you either like their games, you're into it, or you're not. I personally don't mind a couple of their games, but I've never really been into their Fallout games. I've hardly played any of them because they just don't appeal to me. So their acquisition of Bethesda, though it was exciting and it was massive, it really did nothing to me because that's not my genre of field. Now, if they bought Square Enix, RPGs are my forte. Final Fantasy is one of my favorite franchises. That would instantly pull me even more towards Game Pass and Xbox than I currently am already. And I think, this, if it did happen, would be such a power play from Microsoft that it would be difficult to see how Sony would respond to that, honestly.
So, out of that, all of that, like my curiosity comes into the question about Google and Amazon, who we opened up. We talked a little bit about New World on the show. That they're trying us from the games department launching IP. We saw Google say, it's really hard to launch IP, and Google being Google, like them backing and closing down their development studio after acquiring like a handful, just was so Google. But the question would be that is with the Microsoft deal, would that spur more like acquisitions from either of these other companies, or are they just all going to just kind of bow down? I think in terms of the Netflix of games, there is a value in having a competitor to that, so the player has choice. That's why you hear me always advocating for cross save, so that way when it comes to these subscription based models, if you're not happy with the options, you're not like giving up everything and having to go to another service. Thus, the gamer wins. Competition is key to that. And right now, all the news is really positive surrounding Game Pass because developers are winning, gamers are winning. I'm with you, but like the Bethesda deal is cool. It's earth shattering. It's game changing. But like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll play Starfield. It really just depends. Like,
That's the only one I'm interested in.
I love my space games. I just don't get. I've never been hooked, and it's not to say those games are bad. I typically always want to clarify. Just because I'm not necessarily into a specific game doesn't mean that you're wrong for liking it. So please don't hear that. Oh my gosh! But the thing I see though, when it comes down to it, I see Sony as a potential buyer to counter what Microsoft's been working on for years. And they already have a close relationship, or Microsoft is a huge one because they need Japan. And when you look at how the PlayStation didn't sell well in Japan, like for as much people laud the PS4, it sold like 10 million units in Japan. That's not a lot. Like, I mean, I'd happily sell 10 million units. If 10 million people wanted to join the $1 tier, here at Ginger Prime, that'd be earth shattering. Like, I would not understand that. And but like, yeah, so don't hear like Brian's just mocking 10 million. But like when you look at the overall factor, like over 100 million, 120 million units sold, like it dominated the world. It did not dominate Japan. Nintendo dominated Japan. And when it comes down to it, like I see that Sony as a counteractive move, especially to Bethesda, as a defense, is a pure defensive move when it comes down to it. But if Microsoft got Square Enix, I would have a hard pressed time if somebody came to me and said, should I get a PS5? I would not be able to say with any confidence the answer is yes. Because if Microsoft bought Square Enix, hands down, they're in it to win it, and Sony can't withstand it. Just in business, not even in games. I don't care about their first party Microsoft could just buy it. And if they bought Square-Enix, I wouldn't. What's next? I don't. Square-Enix wouldn't be the finishing touch to this puzzle.
How long did it take Microsoft to recoup the 7.5 billion?
A day?
It took a little more than that.
Like
it took
how
them 7.5 billion. I think it took them just over a month to recuperate 7.5, as in net profit.
Okay.
Right? What
so
I'm saying
every month they go out and just acquire.
The point I was making there is Sony cannot compete with that. They will never be able to compete on the level with Microsoft when it comes to spending. If Microsoft today wanted to go out and buy Square Enix and they were at a bidding table, Sony can't compete with that.
Yeah.
So what Sony needs to do right now is build around their own infrastructure. Now, when it comes to Amazon and Google, I think Amazon is extremely smart because they don't have to do anything. No, I'll get back to Amazon in just a sec.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Google, Google has already, made it clear that they've got no interest in buying other publishers. They just want people to port their games over to their platform, and they are happy with providing a convenient way for their community to play games. And, hands down,
the service is great.
The service is great. I mean, I've been using
the best cloud platform currently.
I've been using GeForce Now, and I've been using Stadia. Stadia is by far the best platform when it comes to cloud gaming.
Yes.
xCloud comes second, and for me, GeForce comes third when I'm using it.
I would say GeForce easily second, and I'm waiting for xCloud because I cannot run xCloud on my PC yet. I cannot stream my games from my Xbox Series X to my PC yet. There's so many I cannots. Like, it's coming out with 1080p tech pretty soon, so it's supposed to happen this spring. I'm just waiting for it. But go ahead.
I get that. I'm more referring to how quick it is just to get playing. How stable the service is.
Okay, yes. In speed, Stadia, xCloud, GeForce.
But I totally get your point in regards to, accessibility in putting GeForce ahead of xCloud, because that is obviously a deciding factor.
Yeah.
But now when it comes
have you played Stadia and GeForce Now on your Series X? It's possible. It's completely
but I'm
doable.
not in the alpha.
Okay.
No. But now when it comes to Amazon, they're in a really different spot with their Luna, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't need to buy anyone. If Microsoft bought Square Enix today, they could just go over to Microsoft and say, "Hey, we want to build a channel for Square Enix games." They could do a Game Pass channel, or they like to do it via publishers. Like, they've got a Ubisoft channel on their Luna.
Yeah,
they could just open one just specifically for Square Enix games, and they can cherry pick the games that they want on there and have it on their platform for a fraction of the cost and the deal that they're going to make with Microsoft. So for me, Amazon with their Luna, it's such a different model to what Microsoft is offering and the others are offering. They are offering a kind of channel-based subscription service where, like a pay-per-view kind of thing. You pay for that publisher, you go in and you can play their games within that. Once your period is over, that comes off, and then you can pay for it again or go to a different publisher and pay for their games. And I think that would be a golden opportunity for Microsoft to just dive in there and offer some of their publishers over to Amazon there, and it's just more money for Microsoft.
Yeah.
So for me, Google is straight out the window when it comes to buying Square Enix. For Amazon, it wouldn't make sense to go into that field, to go into that race, because for them, their model is just completely so hybrid abstract that what I'm suggesting would absolutely work for them. That leaves Tencent, and that would be Microsoft's biggest rival. Tencent would be their biggest rival, and Sony would just be left on the sidelines going,
is Sony screwed? Like, did they just F up and ruin their chances? Because I do want to point to King's comment, and then I'm going to come back to that question, because xCloud isn't running Series X stuff. That's supposed to happen this year, and that's also a critique that I've had. Like, when I look at it, that's why, like, Stadia is the number one, but when it comes to content, xCloud is clearly the winner. Is Sony screwed? Like, are they done? Like, is this the last generation? And yes, they'll have their fans, but only the diehards will stick with them. Like,
So
are they in trouble?
it really depends on their first party games. They are really, really banking on that. And sure, I know some of their first party games eventually will come out on PC, but the consumer wants to play it there and then. They want to play the stuff when it's new, it's hot, it's exciting, and everyone else is talking about it. They don't want to play it in 2-3 years' time when no one cares about it.
Yeah.
So what's keeping, in my opinion, Sony afloat is the God of Wars, is the Last of Us, is the Spider-Mans, is the Horizon Zero Dawns. Those exclusives that they've got are pretty much what's keeping them afloat. Because outside of those, they are struggling, in my opinion, to deliver. And it's showing. They can't compete with Microsoft in terms of just sheer games. They've already abandoned their heritage of PlayStation 3 games and Vita games, and they've shut those stores down. They've got no respect for that sort of thing, and people are already upset about that. Whereas Microsoft, on the other hand, is they're now pushing the catalog that is available to be played on backwards compatibility has now been pushed onto xCloud for the Xbox One games. Sorry, the original Xbox games and Xbox 360 games. Those games, they haven't just ignored them; they've improved them. They've made them better and pushed them over to the cloud, so you can play those timeless classics whenever you want, even if it is just to go through on a nostalgia spree. You have that option. You don't get that. You can't go into a store now and pick up games on the PS3 because there's some solid games there. They seem to be restructuring themselves, and as Jim Ryan said, we're only interested in blockbuster titles, and blockbuster titles are great. They're fun, but they're one-time playthroughs.
They're also massively expensive. So you have to have a massive sale through. The blockbuster titles in the past have been used to drive people to your platform, and then you make it up in the 30% margin on every sell after that. So it's like when it comes down to the model, like you want that showpiece to drive people to your platform. Microsoft changed the game, said we don't care about that. Like we just want people to play wherever. They obviously have an advantage with Windows, and now they're saying, okay, we're just going to make it even more accessible. And if they come to Nintendo, like at that point, like you're just looking at a company that has literally just said, all right, how are we going to shut you down? Like we're not going to give you an exit point in that regards. And as good as people praise their first party, I'm gonna give you guys my bias. I don't care about their first party. I've never enjoyed those first party games. I haven't played Spider-Man yet. I plan on it. My PS4 died, and so I was like, well, I'll wait to get a PS5. Still haven't had that opportunity. So at some point, I hope to sit down and play Spider-Man. I'm sure I'm going to freaking love that game. But I don't have this huge connection to it. I was a huge Nintendo fanboy back in the day. So when Sony was out, I was still in the Nintendo. I was like one of those stupid kids like, Nintendo's the best. And it really wasn't. Like the PlayStation, I got a PlayStation with Final Fantasy. So my relationship to Sony has always been Square Enix. Like the reason I've always had a Sony PlayStation in my house has always been for Square Enix. And when I look at it, when I look at the market itself, I think Sony needs Square Enix, at least in terms of like their relationship with me, more than anything else nowadays. So coming back full circle to purchasing like them, I don't know if they can. I'm sure that they got a close relationship. I'm like, when it comes down to it, when you go to bid on a house, I'm sure businesses are different in this way. But when you get multiple bids, the person who's selling the house can choose. And not every time do they pick the person with the highest bid, because there's other factors and involved that can go into that. So they usually kind of pick what they feel is their best or whatever. So they could go easily with Sony based off of their relationship. But I think Sony, like as much as people praise their first party, what's their multiplayer game? What's their game that people keep playing a month to 3 months to 6 months after its release that generates interest in that conversation? People are excited about the next God of War, but they don't have what's up?
Avengers.
That's not theirs. That's Square's.
I'm trolling.
Okay.
I mean, because their PS now got Avengers, didn't it? So that's
right. My like one of the things I'm really looking forward to from a case study perspective is looking at the next Halo game. It's on PC day one. that's going to immediately give it a player base with cross-play, cross-save. Like the fact is that you can go play their latest Halo game, and that's going to hopefully help open it up. I think what would help it even more is if it came to the PlayStation, because that's just a player base. Like the thing is that we've seen is that why do we all talk about, like, why did Call of Duty become such a big thing? And it became such a big thing. It dominated over Halo because not only did it come out every year, but it was everywhere. And back to your whole earlier statement, I was actually, when you said it, I was like, we're going to be calling back to it. Marketing, 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 marketing. What are people playing? What are they talking about? And when you marry that with a specific console, like you're automatically cuffing yourself nowadays. Back in the 90s and the 2000s and like early 2010s, that wasn't the case. It is today. The gaming landscape has shifted, and gamers who have had their blinders on weren't ready for it. That's why I've enjoyed being called an idiot for the last couple of years as I've told people about this, what's happening now. And I still don't, people still are like, oh, no. I was like, guys, like, this is different. This is a different thing. The old models don't function. They don't work. And anyway, that's just, I think Sony has to buy them for Sony's sake. Like if you want to see a PS6,
I just can't see it. If Square Enix comes for sale, Microsoft is moving in for that. It makes no sense.
Oh, they're going to have it. Like Microsoft's not going to let them bid, but I'm assuming the owners of Square, the public, and the controlling interest can still choose. But I think there's a number. I think there's a number that Microsoft puts down that Sony wouldn't even come close to.
I mean, if Sony say, look, we've got a good relationship, we've had all your games on our platform, we've had exclusives, we've had no problems, here's 10 billion, let's wrap it up. And then Microsoft comes along and goes, here's 20 billion. It'd be like, yeah, I really like you, and you're a good friend of ours, but that's 20 billion.
That's 20. It's 20 billion.
Yeah. With that money, I can buy a yacht. I can buy many yachts.
But this has also been a long time coming. Like when you look at what Fortnite did, it really started to shift the narrative. Like I could not have this conversation with you right now a couple of years ago without the Sony hate wagon just barreling down on me. And I'm not joking. Like I was sitting here making this statement, taking the licks because I believe in it. And getting crapped on for stating this views. Now you can talk about Sony critically because a lot of the things that protect them have broken down. Like all of a sudden you're like, and it comes down to a game that we both enjoyed, but like there's obviously mixed reception. But Genshin Impact, like Genshin Impact, everybody else is all having a good old time. Yes, we can play with you. Like they're so like resistant on cross-play, cross-save. But if you start on PlayStation, you're stuck. And then everywhere else can play nicely. It starts to kind of devolve I think it started with Fortnite. Fortnite was kind of a catalyst where all of a sudden these kids can't play with their friends, but everybody else is having a good old time. And then you're like, oh, I thought Sony was gamer first. No, and it's like they were until they're number one. Sony's best when they suck. Like when they're not number one, like they'll do great stuff for the industry. But whenever they're number one, they're like, we got it. We're gonna hold on to this reign forever. And then it's like, and then they end up getting leapfrogged.
I mean, their favorite catchphrase being "for the players."
Yeah,
is $70 for the price hike for their games for the players.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft still has it at 60. They never increased.
You know why it's 70?
Why?
Well, you know what? Like it's so that they could have the PlayStation 5 at a competitive price with the Series X. Microsoft's willing to lose more money.
How does that make it more competitive?
Because they were able to put the PlayStation 5 at $500 instead of $600, and then they make up that difference.
I'm talking about 30%. The game.
Right. So just remember, Sony makes money per every game sold on its platform. Same thing as Microsoft. So they get 30%. So 30% of $60 versus 30% of $70 ends up allowing them financially to sit here and have that delta and say, okay, well, we can take a bigger loss here because we're going to make it up in game sales. The problem is that's a gamble. If they don't push enough PS5s into the market fast enough and they don't end up making where people, again, every time Game Pass is coming into the market and taking an Outriders and taking any MLB The Show and doing that, preventing a sale on PlayStation, not only are they getting good market press, but they are also taking money out of Sony's hands, putting them in a weaker financial position. It is 3D chess in a way that a lot of gamers, I don't think, have really processed that. Sony had to go to 70 so they could make up that delta, because their shareholders are still like, what the hell is going on? And then all of a sudden you start seeing that, you're going to start seeing that news tighten and tighten. And Jim Ryan is either going to be replaced.
He's going to get replaced. Yes,
yeah, I think he's probably going to get replaced. But at the end of the day, like when they start looking at the numbers, and when it'll be a quarterly thing, it'll be a yearly thing, they're going to say like, what the hell happened? Because you end up having this, they're taking a bigger loss every sale. They can't get enough out in the market due to COVID. And then finally, they're not making the difference up on the back end with all the third-party sales. All third-party sales are more or less, PlayStations are sitting there for, like, you play it for Genshin. Do you play for anything else?
At the moment, no.
How many third-party games have you bought on PlayStation 5 over another system?
None. I've almost got nothing for my PS5.
Okay.
Also, the only other game I've got to play on there is Persona, but I've had that since like the middle of the PS4 that I never got around to playing Persona 5.
Right.
But as of right now, I actually was. It's really funny you bring this topic up, because just outside overhead the store, I've got a cupboard where I was just stacking up all my games and seeing what I've got, and I've got like a host of PS3, 2, 3, 4. And then there's no PS5 games. And then I'm looking at my Xbox, and I've got like Xbox One, 360, Xbox 360, One. And then I've got a couple of actually Xbox Series X games. And it's just really funny because my PS5 right now is literally a Genshin machine.
Mm-hmm.
It plays nothing else. I mean, it played a little bit of Battle Wonderland, and I played like a few bits of that, but essentially, its 99% usage is a free-to-play game that isn't even designed for the PS5. It's for the PS4, and it's depressing. I mean, I paid almost £500 for that machine, and there's still nothing there that screams out to me that says, "Please buy me. I want to sit on your shelf so you can play me."
And every time that happens, and so for chat and for anybody listening to the podcast or this highlight. How many third-party games are you prioritizing, especially if it's got the Game Pass option, it's got the PC option? Sony has made a bad step. And yes, I see chat Death Monkey saying that they added Avengers to PS Now. They have to converge the PS Plus collection and PS Now into one product. It needs to be one offering as a way to compete. But that also is going to they have to signal the mental change. And it doesn't mean they have to go and do exactly what Microsoft is doing. But I think they have to own Square. I think there are things that they have to do. But right now, at least for the next 6 to 12 months, I would say you don't. Like if somebody said, "Hey Brian, I'll sell you, we got a new PS5," they're not getting my money because I don't trust that they have the ability to withstand what's about to happen. If they buy Square-Enix, that's going to change that conversation. But they're going to have to get into the acquisition business. Because other people are, and it's gonna be neat to see partner or perish in a way, you know.
But to touch one other point that you mentioned, Immortals: Phoenix Rising. I had a choice of buying that on the Xbox or the PlayStation, and it was cheaper on my Series X, so I bought it on the Series X because it's not available on Game Pass.
Yeah,
but for me, if I've got the two platforms, I'm going to go for the cheapest option. Now, if it's a multiplayer game and it's got crossplay, I'm going for the cheaper option. But recently, and maybe you might not be a fan of Dragon Quest IX, but it went down in price quite heavily on PlayStation Store.
Dragon Quest IX, it needs to be remade.
Sorry,
that
11,
was a DS game. Dude, 11. Dragon Quest 11 is my game of all time. It's the GOAT.
Awesome. So,
if anybody disagrees with me, you say so now. I'll ban you.
I disagree.
And let's see here 1 second. Hold on. And yeah, he's out of here. No, okay.
All right. A friend of mine was like adamant, like, why won't you buy it for the PlayStation? And I said, why should I buy it on the PlayStation?
I've been hovering over the buy on Stadia option just to support the game.
I've got it on Game Pass, and he goes, yeah, But what's going to happen when you get to the point where you're on the final boss and then they pull it off Game Pass? Which, let's face it, games come off.
Mhm.
They give me a 30% discount if I really want to finish it by that
I already
point.
bought it. I just bought it for support on Xbox. I'm not joking. I probably will buy it on Stadia. The weird thing about Stadia, let me just take a little /rant real quick. On my Android phone, I can purchase Stadia games with PayPal. I can only do that on my Android phone. I cannot do that in my browser. I cannot do that on my iPhone. I don't know what the F is going on with Google.
That is Google.
It is so Google, right? Oh, geez.
That is Google in a nutshell. But, even if that happened, I'm going to be offered the game at such a discounted rate. If I really wanted to buy it, I can buy it. There is zero incentive there as someone who owns the new Xbox and the new PlayStation 5 for me to buy any single player game that's multi-platform on the PlayStation.
Yeah.
Plus, even with the older generation PS4 game, like the Xbox One games and the PS4 games, have you tried any of them on the Xbox Series X? Like the Xbox One games. The difference that Microsoft's inbuilt engine does to those older games with its emulated HDR, I don't care what anyone says, it makes a difference for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I would much rather pick up a older generation game on my Xbox than my PlayStation. So where does that leave my PlayStation at this point?
It leaves it as a desk collecting machine until they release a great first party game to which you'll probably go play it, enjoy it, and then you'll set it down, and then your system will gather dust again. And then again, the business side of it is they're losing out on a lot of money.
They are losing.
They're losing out on a lot of money. So you're looking at I think I don't know. I don't know. It's partner or perish in this regards for Sony. I would love for them to compete, but my Phil Spencer said he's not worried about Sony.
He's not. He's never been.
He's like, no, whatever. He's worried about the people who can go toe to toe in a war of attrition, and that's Amazon and that is Google. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. So I'd love to know what you guys thought. It is. Well, it is. It is the future, and it's like when it comes down to it, there's always going to be that market. They will be another, who knows? There could be a PS6, right? Sony could just say, hey, we got this. But from a physical hardware perspective, there will be a market. People will want. Cloud gaming will open up that physical side to not be as limited as it is. In order to hit a $500 price point, people are willing to lose money. And then at the same time, they're also willing to kind of go through that rigmarole. Imagine if they could make an $800 console and actually charge $800 for it and say, you can also play it on the cloud. A lot of things have to happen between now and that future. At least a decade worth of infrastructure investment in the world in terms of how our internet and technology works that way. But at some point, I know that I've seen a lot of people come back to gaming because of the cloud, because they don't have to sit here and invest upfront in a lot. They can just either buy the game or they can sub to Game Pass. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I'm playing this game. This is great. I really miss playing games. I couldn't ever justify the cost of, a console or a high-end PC. And it's like, yeah, I get it.
I mean, it's been rumored for a while now, and Phil Spencer has mentioned it, I think, twice in talking. But I think the one thing that he's mentioned twice, which I'll mention in a second, I'm building up suspense. If it actually does come to fruition and it comes at a good price point, which I suspect it will, because it doesn't really cost them anything to build something like this, it will change the way everyone plays games forever.
Mm-hmm.
Xbox TV.
Yeah.
Now, they've been talking about a dongle, just like the Amazon Fire Stick.
Yep.
That will plug in, and that will basically boot up Xbox Game Pass for cloud gaming on your TV. Yeah. Your TV at that point essentially becomes a £500 console.
Your and then if you have a smart TV, there'll be an app for it, so you won't need necessarily a dongle. It's just going to be an app on your dashboard. So if they've already announced that with Samsung.
Yeah, but they've got a partnership with Samsung, right? That's why.
Right now, I think it starts with Samsung and then trickles down.
Because they've been very tight-lipped about the app on any other TV. I mean, I can assure you it's not going to appear on the Sony one.
Right.
Sony will make sure it doesn't go on there.
Well, Sony was originally talking about with PlayStation Now being at like, here's your Vizio TVs and all those things. So it's just nuts. And I see a couple of people in chat talking about should they pick up Dragon Quest 11? Yes, you should absolutely play that game. It's an incredible RPG. It's just by far amazing.
It's like someone in chat. Let me see if I can find them. They mentioned something which I think, yes, it's a good thing, but it's also a double-edged sword, right? They mentioned how Sony has now put Avengers, which is why I was trolling with you earlier, onto PS Now. And it's a change for good, and it might be a change for the better. But when Microsoft come up and say, we've got Outriders, just ignoring the problems here for a second, we have Outriders, and then Sony comes along and goes, yep, I've got the Avengers. You look like a right joke.
I agree. And we talked about Avengers, and it's like, honestly, like,
if that's the best you can do to combat something as power play as Outriders, put The Last of Us up there. Put an Uncharted game, put the latest Uncharted.
Well, especially if they're not wanting to put up their the first stuff. Like, have a trend. Like, it's been a year. Here you go.
Morales up there.
Something.
Just put something up there that's yours, that's new, that's fresh. Don't put down something that's been out for a year that no one cares about.
I just want to. I'm looking forward to seeing how Sony responds. I'm looking to see what they end up doing. And then Scott says, talking about maybe misunderstanding about the PSN. There is a thing, like, you're not misunderstanding something there. I don't know the logistics of it, but there was something about PS Plus Now collection.
I can explain this.
Please.
Okay, so if you got the PS Plus version of Final Fantasy VII, you are not entitled to a free upgrade to the PS5 version. That is a block that they've put on because you never paid for the game. You're just playing the base game. Now, if you have paid for Final Fantasy VII Remake, you will get a free upgrade to the PS5 version. Your game save will also transfer over to the PS5 version. Now, the DLC that's coming, the Yuffie DLC, is specifically built on the PS5 engine. Therefore, it is not going to be playable on the PS4. It's physically not built for it. It is a straight up built for PS5 only. So
what a freaking nightmare of a mess.
If you do not own a PS5, you will not be able to play the Yuffie DLC.
What you just described there gave me a headache to the point where I'm like, man, that the real feature that is the best feature of all is that smart delivery system. Like, the system handling it, like, you just explaining all these X, Y's, and Z's, like, that's clearly that's a great summary of the problem of the PlayStation brand right now, is it doesn't know what it's trying to be.
No, it doesn't. But I'm also happy. I mean, I know at some point it was going to happen, but for a DLC on a game that already exists, I think was a bit crappy. But I do now want to see some games coming out that are tailored for the next generation consoles.
Oh, yes.
So we can start to see, they need to start leaving behind, because even Outriders right now, it looks great. It looks phenomenal, but it could have looked so much better if it wasn't built on old hardware.
It also was delayed almost a year, and obviously COVID had an impact on that, right? So it wasn't, it launched but it was on a new generation when it was designed for the last generation in that regard. So.
But right now, I want, and some people are upset with what Sony's doing, but to me, I hope this is kind of like a catalyst to other companies to start just saying, we know there's a huge market there, and that's fine, but we want to now start showcasing what we can really do. Like if Forsaken, is it Forsaken? Forspoken.
Yes. Forspoken.
That should be PS5 only.
It is, I believe. Yeah. PS5, PC.
Yeah, but if that was coming to PS4 as well, they would have to make so many sacrifices in terms of just visual clarity, because at that point, it's going to be a PS4 game with updated textures for PS5, not a PS5 game.
Right.
And to me, that is where this generation is failing ultimately. We just haven't seen any real games outside of, I wouldn't even call Miles Morales, because that's still running on the PS4 engine. We just haven't seen anything yet. So
Yeah.
Why did these generations even come out now? Why not delay it by a year and bring it out this Christmas?
Well,
When
that's
you're
the
actually going to
competition
have the
side.
games.
Right, but that's the competition side. Microsoft could easily have still launched their console this year, then you give them a year head start and,
Both
establish
should have
themselves.
delayed it. None of them had
Well,
software.
Well, it doesn't matter. Like Microsoft says cross-gen. And then Sony came out and said, we believe in hardline generations. And then they walked that back and then they launched the
Oh, they walked
PS5.
that back.
They walked that back fast because they were like, we're in trouble. Like, wait a minute. Like, you don't have to buy an Xbox this year, but you're going to do it anyway because you're excited. Okay. Like, wait a minute. Like, oh, and all your games are there. Oh, crap. What are we doing? And then you can see that. You see that clearly in Smart Delivery. Smart Delivery is such this, like, yeah, it's this line item. And it literally is like, it is literally a game changer because every time Sony has a cross-gen game and you have to see all the hoops that people jump through just to get their save converted and all these little things that people, like I said, it's an important feature when I was like, this is going to be a game changer. People are like, nah, it's not going to be that big. Like, no, it's actually one of the key defining moments when you clearly see what Vision has and what's being happening. But we're going to cancel the Outriders conversation because it's well over time for the podcast. So we'll get a panel. Like we've been trying to get Vulkan back. We got a couple people come back. I know Johnny Mac's coming back, I think, next week. So I think that'll be a good time to maybe dive in. Hopefully Outriders will have a week of like, hey, we got all the core critical issues fixed so we can dive into the story and more. Thanks everybody for hanging out for this just powerful podcast. Like really just like some great conversation here. So appreciate all those in chat, asking questions and clarifying different things. Really important to do that. But we'll go ahead and wrap up and say thanks everybody. This has been Epic Loot Radio. My name is Brian and that has been Chaosprime. You are loved and we appreciate you for being here, whether you're with us live or in an archive somewhere or listening on MP3. But anyway, we'll catch you in our next show. Take care.